From the Commonwealth of Virginia, Mr. Griffiths for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it greatly. I find some of the comments today somewhat interesting. I, too, am an all-of-the-above kind of guy, but, let's take a look at history as we see it in reality as opposed to just with our particular viewpoint. I'd confess up front, my district has a lot of natural gas and a lot of coal. But that being said, Mr. Moore said we don't want to get into a situation where we have, one administration coming in and then another administration coming in. But in fairness, that's exactly what we've seen, because if we were to have gone to the market policy, say, 10 years ago that many have advocated today, wind and solar and even battery storage would be in a lot different position, because the market kings would have been those forces that have recently been characterized as being 50 years old, and to now have those particular fuel sources castigated to the trash heap of history without recognizing the huge investments that our ratepayers have put into those, and recognizing that that is, at least for the next 10 or 15, maybe 20 years, a big part of our grid reliability. It creates some interesting issues. We are where we are. We need to move forward. I understand that, but it is nice to note that sometimes you have to look at history. For example, the great state of Florida talks about air conditioning. 125 years ago, before coal was discovered in my district, the people came to the mountains to get out of the heat. And they spent months in the summertime getting out of Richmond and Washington, coming to the mountains of Virginia. It was a big economic source. We've shifted from that to coal, and now we're shifting again, but I don't know that we should do it as rapidly as some people want without, I think, risking our reliability. Mr. Bailey, I gotta say, I was listening. I wasn't in the room when you actually said it, but I was listening on the TV, as sometimes we're wont to do when we're trying to do 5 things at one time. And could you tell me again those numbers? 72 days, I think I heard, that we have able to stockpile certain types of coal and 80-some for another kind. Could you go over that again? Because it was just nice to hear.
I'd be pleased to. Over the past 5 years, the average coal stockpile at a power plant has been 72 days for sub-bituminous, 72 days for bituminous, and 83 days for sub-bituminous. Now, since you asked, over the last 9 years, the low has been a little over 40 days, and the high has been a little over 100 days.
So while there may be some difficulties with other things, you can put a lot of coal in the back 40 if you need it to be there for reliability.
There is a lot, yes, sir.
Yep, I do appreciate that. Look, we've got some interesting things going on. I'm curious, Ms. Speaks, Bachman, if you all consider from your industry standpoint pump storage hydro to be batteries, because that's kind of the way I've been looking at it, and we're looking at putting some of those hopefully into some abandoned coal mines to generate some economic development in our neck of the woods and store that. They're even talking about using some renewable sources, wind or solar, to pump it up in the non-peak periods, and then have the water ready to flow down to the lower levels of the mine at the appropriate time when it's peak. Do you all consider that a part of your mission?
Absolutely, 100%. Hydro was one of the early storage technologies. It helped to offtake the oversupply from baseload resources back in the day when it was beginning to be installed. So we absolutely consider storage or pumped hydro storage as part of our storage infrastructure. Mr. Wright has represented the hydro storage industry quite well, and so I focused on batteries today.
And I appreciate that very much, and do appreciate Mr. Wright's testimony as well. In closing, I have to say it's not politically necessarily a positive, but as a conservative Republican, I'm also a bird watcher, so I am concerned about wind killing birds. I recognize that it may not be a huge percentage. Clean windows on big office buildings does a lot of damage to birds as well. But I once had a bill on that and tried to solve that problem, at least for federal buildings, as we renovated as well. But I do hope that the wind industry and the solar industry will recognize that we have some obligation to make sure we're not whacking or frying the birds as they go over or near our energy facilities.
Thank you for bringing that up, and I very much share your concern as a former executive with New Hampshire Audubon. I as well am out there birding on a regular basis, and I will say the wind industry takes very seriously our strategy to reduce bird take, and appreciate Department of Energy. Actually, some of their grants have gone to helping advance new technologies that are being commercially tested as we speak. So we are hopeful that we can take our low impact and make it even lower.
Thank you very much. And
I would just say on behalf of the solar industry, we also work very hard to mitigate the impact on wildlife, whether it is avian species or some of the terrestrial ones as well. So our company spend tens and tens of millions of dollars per project to try to mitigate those kind of impacts.
And I appreciate that, and thank you very much, and yield back.
For the record, we don't kill any birds.
We're pretty good on that front, too.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now